So I was reflecting on what we can start with. We have a little tradition in our Sangha to start with a song or a prayer. And I would like to start with a song by a woman practitioner, one of the 4 yoginis. This is the very first of 4 yogini songs and it's on page E29. And let's see whether I remember the words.
Can we be a bit louder?
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I can probably make that closer. Yeah? E29. I think, okay. All appearances have the nature of a magic illusion. I will not make an imprint in my mind with the habit of thinking things are real. Native mind has the nature of clarity so bright. I will not let the pollution of thoughts spoil this luminous light. So the tradition of these songs said to be the songs that come from experience, and they are sung by practitioners who basically voice some of the insights in the form of a song. And probably the most famous practitioner who has been doing that is Milarepa, who many of you know, who's here in the shrine. So I think it's very appropriate to start with that because today's talk will be all about experience. So to set it up in the context, this is the 3rd talk in the series of talks that is devoted to living the awakened heart. It's a kind of umbrella topic. And the first talk was given by Pema back in June, where she explained that living the awakened heart is basically a name given to all different practices that we are doing within the Awakened Heart Sangha. So when you join the Awakened Heart Sangha, what do you want to do? You want to live the awakened heart. That's what you want to do. And all these different practices we do, all these different areas that we're exploring, are so that we are becoming alive in these areas. But ultimately, all of them really come to the same thing, which is the awakened heart. And the topic that I am exploring today follows on after Tara's talk that was devoted to love and compassion. And I very much hope that what I will be talking about today is not seen as a very separate topic, even though it does sound like a very separate topic. So officially the topic is, so it's about training, because the whole of the living of the awakened heart is about training in insight through questioning our assumptions about the nature of experience. So how close that is to love and compassion. So that's a question you might want to keep at the back of your mind. So yeah, I understand the living the awakened heart to be about living something meaningful, about something heartfelt, and for it to be awake. And as we know from meditation, being awake makes us more alive. So I think the living thing in the living the awakened heart is very important. It's something about life. And why do we need to train in that? We are obviously, I mean, at least for now, at least the people I can see here, maybe there are some other people who I can't see, but those I can see are alive. So it's somehow, it's it's not just alive by the virtue of our bodies being alive. It's something about the spirit of which we live our lives. That sometimes we can make our lives kind of really difficult to live. And what's the opposite of that is to be full of life, to be alive, to feel energized, to feel open to life. So what is stopping? What's the difference between the two? You know, this kind of feeling lifeless, and feeling full of life. You know, there is seem to be something different between the way it feels, and so that's part of our, the very name of the topic of today is something about questioning our assumptions. That these assumptions seem to be the things that we must somehow they obstruct the very nature of life that is alive, because how else life can be? And yet life sometimes can feel lifeless. So how can that be? So I asked Lama Shenpen yesterday when I had an interview with her and asked her, what would you say are the major assumptions that we are all making that is good for us to start to question? And she said to me the followings. So the most kind of frequent assumption we make is about the world, is this assumption that there is a solid world out there and that we are somehow separate from it and we are here. So out there, here, it's the sense of separation. The other assumption we make is that the world which is out there is also objective, whereas the world that we experience within is kind of subjective, and that there is that difference. Another assumption we make is that this world out there is real, whereas these little things, these kind of psychological, subjective kind of things seem unreal, comparing to these solid things that we can touch and see and smell. Another one is an assumption we make is, I am the body. But, it doesn't take very long to notice that we don't actually think that we are the whole of our body. Because, when we chop our, leg off or an arm off, we still think it's my body, right? So obviously there are certain parts of the body which we think are us and certain parts of the body that we think are not us, and it doesn't all kind of make sense. But that's what the assumptions are. They don't actually make sense. They make sense as long as you don't question them. So what do we do with assumptions? We question them. So all of this kind of holds together somehow, all of these assumptions. That somehow we kind of see through them. And it's like the glasses, isn't it? Like when you have the glasses on, you actually often forget that you've got them on because you see through them. Everything you perceive seems to be like that, and you don't even notice that you made the assumption. So the process of questioning, I mentioned to several people who were talking to me just before the talk, and I said it actually happened to be my favorite topic at the moment, is the very process of questioning and the questions, and how the questioning of assumptions actually our practice is practice of the awakened heart. And I see questions as different from doubt, because doubt is when we undermine something, when we want to undermine something, we disbelieve something. It's like a downer, like we are cynical and we kind of doubt. Whereas question is open. Question is it's a warm curiosity. You kind of think that it's worth to ask the question since you're asking it. So something around wonder in questions. And questions are also different from worry. I don't know how about you, but in my experience, I sometimes confuse worry and questions. Kind of worry is when you kind of undermine everything, and it's like, what if it doesn't all make sense, or what if this happened, and what if that happened, and what if I don't, come up with the right answer, or whatever. This is the worry, which is so fundamentally different than question. To ask a good question actually takes confidence. Confidence to be open to whatever emerges from the very act of asking the question. And children are very good at asking questions. I remember I couldn't wait when my sister's children, they were growing up and they started asking questions, and it's so exciting, and loads of why and how and what for and all of that. And then one day I found myself asking them, why do you ask so many questions? Which is a question as well, right? So but we definitely kind of grew up with this sense of curiosity, which seems to be very natural. It's something really natural to our being to ask questions. It's like, oh, what's that? And what is this? And so, when the children were growing up, I was very much kind of wanting to sustain in them this natural curiosity of a child, and I was looking for books that can support it, because very soon I discovered, as soon as they went to school, they learned that questions are there to be answered, and I noticed that was really closing their curiosity, because they were trying to come up with the right answers rather than asking questions, you know. So I was looking for books that can kind of, bring that spirit in them and kind of contradict or balance a little bit what the education they were getting from school, which was, based on information and things. And so I found this book, which was called Little Philosophers and Big Questions. And when I was reading the, table of contents, and each kind of position there was a question. So it was kind of divided into questions, and questions were amazing. So the questions were like, what are emotions? What is happiness? What is being in love? What is time? Who am I? Who thinks inside me? What happens when I'm asleep? Are dreams real? What happens when I die? So when I saw these first pages of the book, I got very excited. I thought, yes, that's the book for me, for the children, right? And then, to my horror, all of them were answered. And each chapter was about answering the question by no one else but an expert. So they had like a little table where was an expert on every kind of discipline, and giving very adult answers to every question. For example, well, even death. Everything, yeah. So, like the answer would be something like, in different religions, people believe different things, blah, blah, blah. The question to the who thinks inside me's answer was by an expert who was a biologist, saying that thinking happens inside your head, in your brain. And that's it. And then, for the happiness, it was, happiness is how you feel when you get what you want. There you go. Yeah. So, and you kind of grow up, and you have all these answers to all these questions, and you almost believe it all makes sense, that there are these answers to these questions. And it wasn't probably a little bit later in life where you realize, hold on a second, that actually doesn't answer anything, But it takes some time to realize that, because we sometimes for most of our lives, live in an illusion that we know answers to these questions, So let's go back to questions. Let's go back to questions as if we were children again, kind of asking from the sense of curiosity, and actually not asking for information, not asking to be told what's the answer, but asking for the asking's sake, asking for the quality of the mind that opens up when it asks a question. Seems to be that we answer questions as if we wanted to kind of, close off the scary big world that is undefined, and the answers seem to be defining what we're experiencing and putting it in boxes. And from these boxes, we build a wall around ourselves that is in some way secure, because all the answers seem to be there to protect us from the unknown. But don't know about you, but I kind of, in the end, you feel like you're suffocating within it. These answers sometimes become really lifeless, quite dead. They're just information. They don't bring meaning into your life. So sometimes at some point in our lives, we start asking these questions again. You know, there's suspicions that somehow it all doesn't make the kind of sense we maybe initially thought it does. You know, when someone says, you know, who are you? And you say, oh, you're just brain. And kind of maybe for a moment it makes sense, but after some time you kind of, am I my brain? Actually, I have never seen my brain. So I don't actually even know whether it's there. I actually don't know. Seriously, I kind of take it in faith that I have brain. I don't actually know whether anyone ever seen my brain. So it's definitely not my direct knowledge. I actually don't know it for myself whether I have a brain. And it's only a rumor. I heard a brain because people tend to have brains. But there are other questions like, you know, you ask about this, what about death, you know, what are the answers about what happens after we die, you know? And many of us, because we have this suspicion that this is actually a very big question, our hunger for a big answer grows. And some of us then arrive at some kind of big answer that is kind of given by religion. And we cling on to that answer in belief that this is how it is. This is now I've got a big question, I've got a big answer to which I hold on to. Because now it kind of has saved me, this answer. And I remember last year when we went to Nepal, me and Dashu, and we were in this place where we met a couple of young people, and we told them that we are both practitioners, that we both practice Buddhism. And in response, we heard from them that they don't practice religion because religion gives answers that are already made. And what they are interested in is to look for their own answers to their own questions. And I thought this is so ironic because that's for the same reason I'm practicing Buddhism, for exactly the same reasons. That because I want to learn how to ask and I want to learn how to find the answers for myself rather than being given like a ready-made answer, you know, kind of manufactured answer. So yes, what is it that? So if when I'm in the process of learning how to ask questions, this kind of open, curious questions, what is it that I question? And obviously, I'm questioning the assumptions we started with. You know, the kind of. So if I were to question my assumptions around the world, the one question I did ask myself that was, how do I actually know that there is a world? How do I actually know that? What makes me think that I know that there is a world? And then to realize, actually, well, I know there is a world because I can, for example, see colors. Or I can see people, figures, shapes. And notice that all I'm talking about now is my experience. And I've heard, when I first started practicing Dharma, I've heard this expression, all you've got is your experience, and that blew my mind. Because I realized, my goodness, well, isn't that so true? That all I've got is my experience. Actually, I can't say there is a world out there. I can say I have this experience of these appearances. That's what I can honestly say. And if I even went very, very far, I jumped on the train and then on a plane and tried to go somewhere far, far, far away to reach the world, and wherever I would go, I would still find my experience. I can go to Australia and all I'm going to be experiencing is my experience. There will be no Australia anywhere. There will be my experience. this is not to mean, obviously, that I'm kind of trapped in this kind of solipsistic world where there is only me and my experience, because within my experience I have the experience of others too. And perhaps I can't quite make it work. How does it work that you have experience too? Right? So it's not just me having the experience, but you have experience, and you have experience, and you have experience. And we all have direct experience. So when I say experience, and this is where Lama Shenpen alerted me to make it very clear, I'm not talking about the kind of experience you can gain. So, like we live our life, and, you do things and you gain life experiences, right? So you had an experience of traveling to Asia, you had an experience of being a cook, or, this kind of things. Because the experience I'm talking about is something very immediate and something what you can't gain. You can't have more of it or any less of it, because it's immediate. It's only ever fresh. There is no old. There is no kind of leftover experience from yesterday. The experience is continuously unfolding. And because this experience is so immediate, it is always alive. And as I started talking about, we are training in living the awakened heart, it must have something to do with immediate experience, because that is always alive. And probably you recognize by now that when I talk about this kind of experience, I'm actually talking about meditation. Because meditation is our practice of getting familiar, getting used to this way of staying present with our experience. And probably, well, if you have ever meditated, you probably know it's not the easiest thing to do. So we have a habit of turning away from the experience and turning into stories and narratives that are known to us through our thinking. Kind of remove ourselves continuously as if it was too much to bear. And it has maybe something to do with this kind of, the unknown. We try to kind of wall ourselves off, somehow, because it's so big and so unknown and so fresh. And in that way, scary. And yet at the same time, that's the playground, or that's the space in which you can ask the most powerful questions. The questions that are most revealing and that bring the most, they reveal the very nature of that experience. If you ask them within that context, within meditative context. And also something about this experience is that our experience, that is always ours. You can't actually experience someone else's experience. It's actually undoable. And it's a big bonus, in a sense, that the Buddha always said that if we want to know the Dharma, we have to know it for ourselves. There is no other way. The importance of direct knowing for yourself, this asking for yourself, answering for yourself within your own experience, that seems to be the highest authority. You always check your whatever you know against whatever you were told, any instructions you have ever received against your experience. I love quoting Lama when she, when we do the Heart of Meditation course and we are giving instructions to how to meditate, and we say, wake, heart, be open. So wake to your immediate experience, connect to your heart, be present and open to whatever arises. And then she says, and then it's your job to find out what's wrong with these instructions. Because these instructions are just the pointers. To what? What are they pointing at? They are pointing at your experience. And your experience, no one's experience can be really truthfully put to words. So when a practitioner shares with us their experience, like is it Rachungma? The Rachungma is Rachungpa? No. Anyway, the first yogini, the song that we just sang before we started, she was speaking from her experience. And how come her experience could be meaningful for us? How can it bring any meaning to us? Because if she was just expressing her experience, what that got to do with my experience? If we were to kind of follow that logic of, all we've got is just, all I've got is my experience, it's like nothing to do with your experience. But it seems to be that our experiences actually aren't that separate, even though they are very private, in a sense that they are very intimate, they are yours. And at the same time, we seem to be much more connected than we think conceptually. We divide ourselves into separate entities. But then someone says something really, truly meaningful and it touches us. Why would it touch us since it was someone else's experience? And yet it does, somehow. Because maybe we actually have a little bit more in common than we think we have. Something about the nature of our experience. And yet at the same time, we can connect on that level, on the level of experience. And at the same time, it is so intimate. And, more intimate, like the word intimate, you think intimate and you think, it has to do something with sex, right? When we think intimate. But it's actually even more intimate than that. It's immediate experience. And it's kind of even more immediate, and kind of we are not removed from it because it's just here, It doesn't travel any distance. Your experience to your experiencing it doesn't travel any distance. There is no distance between the two. Because there is nothing in the way. We kind of think that there is me and my experience only because we kind of see it conceptually like this, that there is a knower and the known. But in my experience, I know it straight away. I mean, there is no separation between my experience and me knowing it. It's just it. It's just there. And in that sense, you can't go wrong with your immediate experience. There is no way you can go wrong with your experience, because your experience is just what it is. It can't be anything else. There is no mistake, ever. Traditionally, direct valid cognition, which is a traditional term for this way of knowing, is defined as new and undeceiving awareness. It's undeceiving because there is no deceit. How could it be? And that's why relating to immediate experience is the way to know things as they really are. Because if you want to know the nature of things, the nature of being, the nature of experience, that's the way to go about it, is to relate to immediate experience, because there is no deceit. However, and this is a very big however, we misinterpret our experience. We misinterpret our experience continuously, on daily basis, almost non-stop. It happens so quickly that we don't even notice it. And then when we sit in meditation, that's what, we kind of realize, that this continuous interpretation, the narrative, the way we think about ourselves, the way we think about the world, all these assumptions through which we filter everything that we experience, it kind of prevents us from experiencing ourselves and the other. So therefore, in that sense, it is largely inaccurate how we interpret our experience. That's why it's so important that we learn how to stay with it, how to stay true to it, how to stay present with it. And it's really interesting, I think. When I think that way, I kind of like I want to go and sit and meditate almost straight away because it all sounds really interesting. It's like, how is your immediate experience like, and it's only you can know it, it's like you have exclusive viewing to your own direct experience. So within that space, or maybe that space opens when we ask questions, the questions that we can't easily find an answer to, not the answer that is any kind of information. So when I remember the questions I did ask myself when I was a child, before I kind of learned anything, I remember once not being able to sleep all night because I couldn't work out whether the universe is finite or indefinite. So if there is the end to the universe, what's beyond that end, right? So is that like a line where it goes, universe ends here? So what would be beyond that line? So be a little bit more of the universe? Well, that would mean that that's not the end of the universe. But if it doesn't end, what does that mean? And then, you ask an adult, someone very reasonable, how is that like? And they will tell you a theory, that there was a big bang, and then the universe is expanding, and they talk as if it meant anything, it's like, you still don't know. And there is another way of closing these questions. You can say, oh, no one knows. The end of the story. There is no point in asking these questions because no one knows. And yet, every time I think, it's like, yeah, you get puzzled. And actually, my understanding of these questions is that a good question is not the question that kind of gives you a way into an amazing, intelligent, sophisticated answer. A good question is such a question which actually makes your mind wander. Makes your mind kind of cracks it open. And interestingly enough, as I was preparing for this talk, Lama Shenpen, she has written stories from her life, and we were last evening, as most of the evenings, we actually read bits from her book. The book is not available yet, but we hope it will be soon. And she was talking about this vision she had, or a dream was it, from Kalo Rinpoche, who told her in the dream that something, and stop questioning, stop questioning. And I was thinking, so what's that about in the context of, how good it is to question? What is this message, stop questioning, stop questioning? And maybe that's something, maybe this is a process we go through in meditation. First, we open the question, we find a question that something opens. And then once we opened it, we rest. And that's where we stop questioning. We are not engaging our conceptual mind anymore to try to come up with a good question or a good answer. We leave it, just leave it. Because the answer never comes in words. The answer never is something which you can figure out. And if we get hooked up on questions for too long, we will never allow the space in which the answer can emerge. I say answer, but it's never an answer like it's like this or like that. The universe actually ends at this point. It's never an answer like this. But it's not like there is no answer. It's not like to say that somehow you just kind of ask and just wait. Well, that's the thing, that we actually do wait, right? We wait for something, and when this something arises, we call that insight. And And that insight, is a word. Yeah. For a moment, things make sense, I suppose, in a very different way than conceptual. Like things fall into place. And something about insight, I would probably say them. If I were to now come up with a definition of an insight that I have never prepared, I would say that it will be something about something deeply meaningful. It's like it's meaning in itself. It doesn't need meaning attached to it. It doesn't need like you have an insight and then unless your teacher or your friend or whoever tells you that it was meaningful, it's not meaningful. It's like the moment you've got an insight, the moment you've got this, it's like it's inherent in it, the meaning of it. Like it's so meaningful. It's significant. Our meaning and meaningfulness and significance is like deeply significant. And then it's gone. And sometimes it just lasts a moment where you've got this something opening and then it's not there. But it's only not there because you just tried to have it. You just tried to grasp it. You just tried to contain it, put it into a little jar or something, and have it and put it on a shelf and have, I've got an insight and you can't have it. It's not something which you can have. It happens to you, but you can't have it. And that's what we often, whenever we have good experiences, and this is when I say experience in here, I mean this gainable experience. That's what we try to do. We try to gain it. We're trying to have it. So I wanted to say a few words about discovering the heart of Buddhism, because not everyone perhaps knows about this course, but and even those people who do know this course, I would say this is probably one of the things I always kind of look out for, kind of this element which is there very much in the Discovering the Heart of Buddhism course is throughout of it is full of questions and full of encouragement to rest in whatever arises in our questions, through our questions. So in a sense, it's very helpful because these big questions are not something what we can sometimes easily come up with ourselves. I think it was Tamsin who said yesterday, that she finds it actually quite hard to come up with some very big, significant question. Kind of you can start putting a pressure on yourself to try to come up with significant question. And I would say definitely in that front, the Discovering a Heart of Buddhism has really helped me to come up, kind of be given questions that I've never conceived for myself. They kind of came like sideways, like, it was like, whoa, where did that come from, this question? So one of these questions that was at the very beginning of the course was about, these assumptions that I started discussing at the very beginning, the world out there and me in here. And okay, so let's say that that's the case, that the world is out there and I'm here. There is objective world there, subjective something here. Where's the boundary between the two? Does the world start in here or like out there? Like, where does it start? And I was like, well, obviously it's out there, but like, what do you mean there? And then I thought with this very clever answer, I thought, skin, my skin is definitely a boundary between myself and the world. It's like right here, the boundary is visible, it's here. But then that my experience is contained within my skin. No, I can actually see it from the outside almost, like oh, how does that work? And then, yeah, that made me wonder. A long time, that very question. So some of these questions are really big, but at the same time, I just done 2-month retreat. I was very lucky doing it here at the Hermitage over the summer, which was the most amazing summer ever. And I was trying to kind of work on making questions simple. Because some of these questions maybe sound quite philosophical and quite big. I was wondering, how can we make these questions much simpler? And I was struck by the very fact that what does make a question? Like the simplest way of making a question is to add a little wave above full stop. That's all you have to do to create a question, right? So you don't even have to put the whole, question mark, because you've got the dot there already, probably with most of the statements. So all you have to do is to add a little thingy above it. And that's how you make a question. And so I thought we can actually play with questions in that way, like, for example, world, question mark. Then you can kind of, what is world? Just world? World? Clarity? Emptiness? Question mark? Kind of play it with a very simple way and leave it and rest it. But we kind of wait, at least I wait for this moment when my mind goes, I'm like, can't work it out. And that's the place to rest. I was thinking that this is me being a bit silly, but I was thinking, what can we compare this little question mark to? This little thing, and I thought, it's like a tin opener. Like, we know when you have a tin and you have that little thing you have to pick up to open it, and it goes, it's like a bit like that. This kind of cracks it open. So when you question full stop of anything, really, you get it moving because you just questioned full stop. And there is something about being alive that is about unfolding, isn't it? When we feel lifeless, depleted of energy or uninspired, it feels like we are in this kind of full stop mode, not moving, stuck. Whereas the question mark, because it questions the full stop, it gets us moving, gets the experience flow somehow. Okay, Adrian asked me, leave plenty time for questions, obviously, given that we are talking about questions. I might not be up to speed to answer all of these questions, but hey, we did say that it's not about answers, really. It's about the very question, right? And see what happens with the questions. Are there any questions? Or comments? Anything you would like to share? Done? No? Neba?
I wonder, could you talk a bit more about how to identify insight?
Are you asking because you are not sure what they had inside in that way?
Because sometimes I think that was insight. And then after it's gone, I think, was it insight? Or was that just me thinking it was insight? So I then go round and round and round with it. So, yeah, just if you could help.
Yeah. Probably the moment you said that was inside, it was already too late. It was probably prior to that. And then what unfolds from there, from the moment you go, oh, that was inside. Was it inside? Oh, I'm not sure. It's all conceptual. Even the very naming of it, even saying, oh, that was inside, even that was probably already after insight, you know. So I would say probably, and I would like to hear other people's experiences. Probably there are many people here who are much more experienced than I am, so I would be interested to hear what you think. But I would say that probably when it happens, you know for yourself, in yourself, and you actually don't even need to name it. And then you don't probably even need reassurance from anyone else, whether it was inside, wasn't inside, you know for yourself. But then how to interpret it, that's another story. Because that's where you need a teacher, right? Because you've experienced something that was fresh and alive, and then how are you going to put it in the useful framework that could benefit your practice on the whole? That's another story. I remember when I was studying Buddha Within, which is Lama Shenpen's book, and there was this little footnote that got me sleepless for some time, where it was says it is possible to misinterpret your experience, and I thought, oh no, but you kind of know your experience for yourself, right? But at the same time, you might add up to it. You know, you might label it in a way that is actually not beneficial for your practice, and to add up to the confusion, to the complexity of that even more, Rigzin Shikpo, which is Lama Shenpen's teacher, he says, it is possible to have genuine insights on the wrong path. So sometimes, you know, we take insights to mean, oh, I must be on the right track because I'm getting all these insights. And that's again where you get the teacher, and the teacher tells you the insight was correct, but you are moving in the wrong direction. You misinterpreted your insight. So that gives me an opportunity to say something what Lama asked me to say. It's how important one-to-one relationship with a teacher is in these things. Because she said this is so individual, like each person understands things in their own way so much. This is so precisely unique to each person, is that's why working one-to-one with a teacher is so essential. For them to have enough of a relationship with you to point out to you the way, the direction that is for you in that context. And okay, talk is wonderful, it can inspire us and can help us along the way, but it isn't until we have pointing out instructions from our teacher that we can truly gain confidence in our insights. And this is to mean not for someone else to tell us what they mean, but how we can use them for the benefit of ourselves and generally for our practice to benefit others. So in that context, yes, you very much need a teacher to help you to interpret the experience you have had. Does that make sense? Yeah. I'm interested what other people think insight is, those who have practiced a while.
I'm really enjoying you talking about this because it's showing me perhaps that I think I've had a bit of a conceptual idea about insight as some piece of wisdom.
Something you can have.
Yeah. And I'm very guilty of thinking, oh, I must hold on to that. I've realised that. I must just write it down. So in a way, is the idea of words and thinking very key to this? Like you say, when I'm listening to you, I'm getting a sense of it's like a moment, that it's an experience in itself, insight. Is that?
Yeah, and then Lama would always say, but it was never in time, meaning that the experience, you know, when we have an insight, a genuine insight, it is never in time. We make it to look as if it was in time because we look backwards onto it, right? It already kind of happened. We look back and we decided, oh, it was a very short moment. But insight is not in time, like love is not in time. That's why we say, you know, I will love you forever, and we actually mean it. I mean, whenever I said it, I remember being a teenager, and I fell in love really deeply when I was 14. And I remember, and I said to I can't remember, my parents or someone adult, and I said to them, I will love this person forever. And they said, oh, child, what do you know about love? Yeah, only 14. And I actually meant it. And I know what I meant. I still remember what I meant. I actually meant something ultimate, in that love. It was something ultimate. And yes, that love is over in the sense that, I don't see this person anymore. We don't have a relationship and all of that, so that all these kind of surrounding circumstances have changed. And yes, it perhaps was a very short time, 2 months, but it didn't feel like in time. It felt, its significance was beyond time. So I would say probably insight is the same. It's, the meaning of an insight is beyond. You're touching something beyond, but then you're trying to, put it in some kind of context of our conceptual knowing, because we rely on conceptual knowing so much in knowing anything about the world that we try to fit it into something. And then it feels like, oh, it was just fleeting, in just a moment, right? Because your conceptual mind just literally doesn't know what to do with it. Because it's so much outside of its realm, so much outside of its, ways of dealing with things, that it just goes, it was insignificant, right? It kind of it was insignificant. Oh, it was super significant. It was a very, very special experience, which I had. So either way, we try to contain it somehow, but it's not containable, because it's just not that kind of game where you kind of have it, in any way. Does that make sense? Mm. Mm. Mm.
Yeah, thank you, Patti. Really interesting. So listening to this question about how do we know we've had an insight?
Mm-hmm.
The question that came to me is these experiences, which everyone has experiences. It's quite an interesting question of where do we experience? How do we experience? I think just in my experience about that gives more clues as to what's going on, more clues as to if it was insight, if there was something going on, because it's not just up here. It's definitely not conceptual. Something falls away here, but in our body and in our emotions and our sensations, all levels, there seems to be something going on. There seems to be experience on lots of different levels, doesn't it? So I think, without giving any hint of an answer, there's definitely, for me, a lot of exploration on
where is it happening? Yeah.
What's going on? What's going on, isn't it?
And at this
when the concept disappears. Something like that. Question on
yeah.
what your thoughts are on that, or your experience of it.
One thing I was thinking of is like, how is the experience without a thought? And I thought, well, it's unthinkable, by definition. It is experienceable, yet it is unthinkable. One thing I was thinking about this, where in my experience is, we are obviously talking very metaphorically, because if I say, many of us experience things, for example, on our belly level, things like that, but it's not like you will open our stomach and you actually experience that, right? I know. I know. Yeah.
It's not people experience things in their body, at any level, very, very clearly in their body. And not in a necessarily physical way, but
that's right. So experiential body,
absolute experience. People all the time have distress, which is the great pain. It's the greatest experience, and it's definitely focused in the body. There's something about insight and experience is very much a body thing. I find emotion, and even within emotion, it's in the body. So everywhere in the body there is experience. I think when we stop thinking something is happening, I think questioning this has really helped me. What's going on in the body? Wow.
It's like we can put the word body and then add body.
Yeah, of course.
What is a body?
Which we seem to feel in our physical body, which obviously is questionable. I think it's important to remember that we've got this amazing bodies with all sorts of incredible sensations.
What is body?
All of it's experience. When we stop thinking about it anyway.
And this is also not to say that thinking is not helpful, because that's exactly what we are doing now, right? So we are thinking about it, thinking about questions, talking about questions, thinking about body, talking about body. It's a big area, isn't it, body? I would love to request from Dasha to give some teachings on that, because he at some point he was very passionate about that. And he even said once to me that he thinks that the path to liberation is through the body. Yeah. So it's a body? Big question, isn't it? Yeah.
I've heard it said for true understanding, maybe the same word as insight, understanding, for it to be true. Okay, every word's got a question.
Yeah.
That it needs to be on at least 3 levels.
Mm-hmm.
So there needs to be some cognitive element to it, some emotional element to it, and definitely some body experience. And you could add other levels to that, but if there's not 3, it's only concept, it's only head.
Yeah.
If it's just emotion, then it's questionable.
Yeah.
So I've heard it said, and there's something.
That is interesting, isn't it? Yeah. It's like that it is possible to have intellectual insights, right? So it's happening all the time, like these moments of, oh yeah, I know how to work it out, or I found the answer how to put this chair together, These are,
And it must also be in the body.
Yeah.
If you've got all 3, then maybe something's happening.
Yeah, maybe that's one of the things to think about that. Yeah, but maybe what you are getting at is something about this experience being full of many things, not just thinking experience, not just physical experience, not just emotional experience. But at the same time, I think in the moment of an insight, these are not separate things, are they? Emotions, thoughts, bodily sensations. And this is something what we put in again this afterwards. How do we interpret it? What kind of sense do we make of it afterwards, right? So, and there are different ways in which we can think about it. And certainly body is a big one. It is widely known that when the insight arises, it does affect you. I've known people who had insights that left them after great impression for weeks sometimes afterwards, and sometimes it is just a moment of it's like this, you kind of experiences like that. It's like, these moments. And at the same time, Lama Shenpen was just quoting to me yesterday Jayasiddhi, who said that he had some kind of insight which wasn't at all what he expected. Another characteristic of insight is mostly not at all what you expected. And he said, well, one of the things I didn't expect was that instead of I went, huh? So that can be an insight too, right? Just kind of, what? No?
But then maybe the conceptual mind thing,
Yeah. Well, exactly it. We try to dismiss things that don't fit into the kind of, because we, as I was talking about this wall we build around it, we try to stay safe basically within the things we know, right? So if something comes in and threatens that, constructions we made, of course we try to make it, no, it's insignificant, no, it actually was nothing, right? And that's why having also spiritual community is so important, right? So Lama Shenpen is so passionate about us building a Sangha, building a community of people. So not only the teacher, but also the environment in which you can place these insights into a significant context, that they actually do make sense, And you probably did hear many stories about people who had, from our point of view, amazing insights, but because they were in the environment when no one recognized it as a genuine insight, they all thought they were just simply mad, including they themselves, kind of not trusting what they just discovered because they didn't have the context to put it in for this to be actually a significant experience. And it's so easy to put it into insignificant or madness, mental illness, anything you like, because it just doesn't fit in. So what do you do with it, Is that what you're thinking?
I also think we struggle so much trying to find the right words to try to describe what it is we felt we were experiencing. And we spend so much time struggling with that rather than just going, ooh. And remembering what it felt like, but we've got an urge to try and describe it to somebody else and get it justified.
It's a big urge for us to share, isn't it? I mean, why am I sitting here? I'm sitting here because I want to share, and so on one hand, yes, there is like no need for us to put it into words. But at the same time, I think if I haven't heard other people trying to explain what they have experienced, I probably wouldn't have been inspired. So, there are these two ways, aren't they? That kind of the balance between you can't quite encompass it. And yet the great poets, the great writers, the actors and, the whole arts are about that, aren't they? It's like you look at the painting and you go, and like you somehow connect to something living through a great piece. It doesn't actually have to be even great piece of art. Actually, that's one thing I'm discovering recently. We tend to think the greatest artists can make you, kind of realize this or make open. Well, me and Dasha, we've been just the other night comparing our favorite guitarists, and he was playing me Prince, who he obviously thinks was the greatest guitarist, which probably makes many people, it's a justified statement to say that, it's the Prince was greatest guitarist ever. So then I played him my favorite guitarist, which my favorite guitarist from when I was 16. Not a very great piece of music at all. And yet it inspired all sorts of amazing things in me. And I remember always thinking about it. I was very puzzled about it. Why do I like crap music, And why does crap music wake in me this amazing, experiences, even though especially now listening to it and in some of the video clips, oh my goodness. I said to Dasha, in my defense, I was 16, that's all I've got to say. But still, it does inspire something amazing, because maybe it's not about this piece of music. Maybe it's not about the guitar, not even about the guitarist. Maybe it's something about our true nature. That actually, that beauty, yes, it can be sparked by something on the outside, but actually it is within you. It's in your nature. So something will kick it off, So, yeah, on the other hand, yes, probably, I remember when I was started practicing and I was asking Lama, is it a good idea to keep a meditation diary, where you basically, a little bit like Namta was saying, kind of write down some of your experiences. And I was almost certain that she will say, no, it's not a good idea. That's what I thought she would say. Because by that time I picked up, especially from Zen tradition, that, these words and conceptual knowing, this is not good, Where she said, I actually might find it helpful, she said. And ever since, I have a little diary. It's not very thick and it's not densely written. There are just not very many sentences there. But the way it helps me is that I sometimes, especially when I start a retreat, I look back at my notes, and they are very scattered notes. I'm not writing pages and pages. These are like individual sentences. But they do help me to, okay, that's where I left it, kind of thing. There's like, it does help me to come back to, it's like a pointer, isn't it? It's something. It's never in this sentence. It's always within you somehow, but it can help you kind of to go back to it. But then if I were to, want to write like the greatest meditation manual, and it becomes project, that's probably where, although, great teachers have done that. They did write great manuals for meditators that are proven to be very helpful for many people. So it's the balance, isn't it? Kind of not clinging to words, but also not discarding the words as something bad, because words are there to point at something. Someone asked me once, what would you say, it's like the key point in the whole of the Dharma. And I think there is one thing, so I'm going to say that because it's exactly that. It's like, probably everyone knows here that, but I'm going to say it. When the wise man points at the moon, the fool looks at a finger, right? So there is nothing wrong with the finger, no, there is anything wrong with the moon, The finger is actually very helpful as long as you make a leap, right? So there is no moon to be seen here, but if you look at where the finger is pointing, that's the way to use it, right? So words are finger, conceptual mind are the finger. Anything written, anything spoken, anything kind of, when you encompass something through any expression or painting or anything, these are all fingers, right? Pointing at something. It can be very useful. Does that make sense? Mm.
That is actually very nice, because I used to have a meditation diary to do with mindfulness, and I completely gave up because I used to think, what you shared, it was really useful for me about the immediate experience, because all these are just words, and all of a sudden I'm just beginning to realize what is this, to live this immediate experience. It's different than being the observer of that experience, which in mindfulness we talk about a lot and write about, the observer, the knowing. So my diaries were all about noticing that I was thinking, so they were all the same, one day after another. So what really was the juice was the thinking. So okay, so what was that? And they were not there, because all I could notice was that I was noticing that I was thinking. So I really liked the idea of just having some words, some just things
Like pointers, right?
that
Yeah.
feel like
Yeah.
it's alive.
And we can use other people's words, like, liturgies for that reason. That's my understanding why we do liturgy. Sometimes when people come here for the first time, I'm thinking, in my mind, I always feel that I need to explain to them why do we do liturgy, because it definitely wasn't at all obvious for me, why do we do liturgy, and I always wish someone asked, and no one ever asked, but I always wish I can tell them. Why do we use liturgy? So that's my understanding, that these liturgy is basically a collection of fingers pointing at something, the trampoline for us to jump into something experiential. That's my understanding. Tara, did you want to say something?
I was just aware that we were talking quite a lot about insight as a discrete sort of event. I agree, not in time. I was just wondering if you wanted to say anything more about the possibility of insight as something that's sort of a more imperceptible. Do you see what I mean? Like
Oh, tell me.
Well, that you may, like, some years down the line, suddenly realise that you're seeing the world differently.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we might go away thinking, oh, I haven't had any insight.
Yeah, I'm missing out.
It can creep up on us unawares.
Yeah, it's like the shift being, instead of immediate, being gradual and kind of changing. Yeah, and sometimes we don't know that until we kind of look back and things like that. It's like, Yes, has anyone here had that experience of kind of?
That's the true nature of experience in many ways. It's gradual. Change is continuous.
It's the unfolding. Anna, did you want to say something? Oh, did you just say? Just agreeing that sometimes it's unfolding. Yeah, it's kind of not. Sometimes don't notice. Actually, for researching this day to day, one of the things I was playing with, I didn't tell you that because I couldn't make it relevant enough. But I did enjoy kind of collecting the kind of questions that children ask, you know, when before they kind of got the idea that you have to have an answer. And one of the questions I found from a child was, I wonder why I don't feel I'm stretching. People tell me I'm growing every day. So why don't I feel like, you know? But it's like that, isn't it? When you kind of, probably those of you who have children will remember from their own childhood, the lines measuring, 1 meter or whatever, it's kind of, and this, until you actually see that on the wall, you actually don't realize that the growing is happening, the unfolding is happening. Wrinkles on your face are also the same sign. So maybe that's the kind of gradual unfolding, and we can't see it until we kind of, something happens and we realize. And that in itself can be an insight, right? When we look back and, I actually didn't realize that these things were unfolding for me. Didn't notice.
Like when you notice you can cope with your husband more.
Yeah, I had a friend who was staying here once for a retreat, and he was practicing for like 20 years and saying, I actually didn't notice any difference, like nothing particularly changed, until one day it dawned on me that I must getting a little bit more enlightened because I stopped swearing while driving in London. There you go. Yeah. Are there any more questions? I don't know whether there are any people online. I don't know what's happening, but if there are people who would like to online who would like to ask, we can do a test whether we can hear you. Maybe you need to unmute yourself.
Yes, if you want to ask a question online, just go ahead and unmute yourself and show your video.
Whoa, what does that mean? How intimate do we get?
They're hiding.
Do I take it to mean that aren't any questions online? Yeah?
I think I'm really fascinated by this talk, and I think you touched on it halfway. That this idea is of, we're all individuals, we're meditating, we're having our experience, but life is all about sharing experience. This idea of dialogue just, that's amazing, isn't it? We can't share experience, but we've got no choice to share it. I wonder if you could say a bit more about your...
I'm still discovering that one. All I've got to say is that we think that there are only two options. We are either separate or we're all the same. We kind of think, either or. But that's very distinctive for conceptual mind, isn't it? Conceptual mind operates like that. In conceptual framework, to understand something, we need to distinguish that something from something else, because we don't know how to know any other way. That's why we need to learn a different way of knowing, because you can't know the reality itself through that way. If your only way of knowing things is through, get any book you like, any encyclopedia or anything about any kind of knowledge, biology, physics, psychology, is full of terms that are distinguished from other terms. It's full of phenomena that are this but not that. And it's just manifestation of how our conceptual mind tries to make sense of things by differentiating. Make sense, of course, that's how we know, right? How is a question different from an answer, right? Or how are you different from me, right? How is a man different from a woman? From how one woman is different from another woman? In all of this, what are the distinctive characteristics of this or of that? So it's nothing wrong with it. It's just the way we know, things. We know by differentiating. But that's not the way to know the true nature of reality, because it's not like that. So you can say we are all connected, we are kind of all one, but then we go into, okay, so we have this philosophical view that we are all one, but no, that's not quite true, because there are things that are very our, and at the same time we can share them and they can become shared. So that's one of these things where your mind goes, whoa. And that's how you know that you're on the very edge of conceptual knowing, where your mind goes, but there is that thing about being deeply connected with others, isn't it? Is that kind of like, you sometimes have sense of no separation. Lama Shenpen loves saying that we are all different. No, we are not different, but distinct. Is that what she says? We are kind of, yeah. So she would say, the Buddha is not different from any other Buddha. As those of you who know something about the Buddhism, as it's not like there was only one Buddha. There are loads of Buddhas, loads and loads of Buddhas. And they all have attained full and perfect enlightenment. Does that mean they are all the same? Yes. Does it mean that they're all different? Yes. So they are the same in nature. Maybe that's an answer. The same in nature, but distinct in their being. So discovering the heart of Buddhism language, which might not be clear to everyone here, but let me just throw it in here. That's how we will talk about the mandala, that each one of us has personal mandala. Each one of us has this kind of, uniqueness about us. But in our nature, it's no different. That's why we can share. That's why we can have experiences that are touching us deeply, even though they are someone else's. They speak to something in us.
I want to ask.
Would you like to ask a question?
About, because when you were talking about asking questions in relation to insight, and then that's what is not a bit clear. So, because for me, if I ever experienced anything, which I think I did, I never asked any question. It was just like something like that, and my whole being is like, am I feeling something here? But then sometimes it just goes. Like today, I think I had an insight and it just went. So I was a bit curious about this link that between asking question and insight. Were you meaning that we can ask questions and then have an insight on that?
So it is my understanding that we ask questions to open up. And when we are open, the true nature of experiences just emerges naturally, just happens. And that's what we call insight, the moment where we are connected with our true nature. This is what we call insight. But it's not like we need to, put treats so that insight comes to us. It's like there all the time. What we are doing is we are ignoring that insight continuously. We are just ignoring our true nature. And so questions can help with us opening. That's why I said it's like a tin opener. It's like, it just opens us for a moment for this to emerge naturally. But we can be open without questions as well. We can just rest, right? We can sit in meditation and just rest in meditation. So let me just say a few words around that, because maybe that will be helpful. In our tradition, we practice two types of meditations, or two processes, which Lama Shenpen calls it formless meditation, which is practiced by us, is consisting of two processes. One is the calming meditation called shamatha, and insight meditation, right? So vipassana. And so it's a conceptual, it's a division, right? As if we were talking about something real, but actually it's just names and words. But it does help sometimes maybe to see that when we, firstly we try to just allow our mind to settle. So that's what, many people are attracted to meditation, because they think it will help them to become calmer. Well, have they tried to meditate? And then you discover that, all sorts of things are happening within you, right? But after some time, if we learn how to truly rest, either things happen to us naturally because it's our true nature. So we've settled our mind enough for things to just simply appear as they really are, right? Or we can help opening with insight meditation, and that's where we bring questions in. So in discovering the heart of Buddhism, for anyone actually studying living the awakened heart, we kind of recognize this, that you can do different ways with questions. I mean, we can work with them differently. One is you can just take them as part of your reflection. So in your daily life awareness, you can just reflect on things. Oh, how does that work? And how does that go with that? It's a thinking process, but a focused thinking process, right? So a process where you actually, it's a when you are trying to become clear about what you think and what makes sense. And then you can take some of these questions that can come to you and bring them as part of your meditation practice after you've settled your mind. So when you do the shamatha practice and you have a sense that you've rested enough, your mind is clear enough, you can bring some of this question into your meditation and leave it there. That's not when you do actual thinking and reflecting. Lama recently, I know that a couple of weeks ago, she said, it actually doesn't matter that much. But I found it very helpful to keep it quite clear that, especially if some of us come from Christian tradition, and meditation in Christian tradition means reflecting, right? Just basically just thinking process, right? So in meditation, it's not like we are trying not to think, but we are trying not to encourage discursive thinking, right? I don't know whether that is answering your question. Yeah? Okay. Yeah, thank you. It's nearly the end of our time, but I would like to give the last opportunity if anyone was kind of gearing themselves up to say something. No, oh, there you go, Namya, Namgyal.
You mentioned about the teacher that you were teaching as Lama teachers, and one of the things when we're looking for a teacher is, or a comment or a phrase is, the teacher has great insight. Mm-hmm. Now, how do we determine that statement? Teacher has great insight. What does that mean?
I will tell you what it means for me, but I'm not sure whether that's the correct answer. For me, it means that when I listen to that teacher, I have a great sense of things falling into place, making more sense. So I suppose, I don't know about their insight, but whatever they are sharing with me brings about my insight. So that's the thing I can trust. I can trust my experience. If they come and say, oh, I experienced this and I realized that, by the way, Lama Shenpen never says anything like that, Yeah, but how would I know what it actually means, I actually don't know. But for me, it means that, for me, the teacher, who is a teacher for me, is the one who makes my mind clearer. Yeah. So it's really more about my insight than their insight. So I don't know.
I think we can sort of feel the connection, can't we?
Oh, and connection is probably making that happen. You know, that sometimes, you know, I have heard many great teachers who have amazing reputation, and I would listen to them and I would feel that everything they say, I'm sure, is correct, but somehow it doesn't bring life to me or this sense of connection. And then with certain teachers, just seem to, yeah, something clicks and there is more. It just becomes very natural and everything seems so simple, you know. That's maybe another characteristic of insight, that it is actually quite simple. You kind of think, oh, it was so simple right from the beginning. Like, why? It's like, why do we make it so complicated? It's so simple. Yeah, but it's a big question. How do you find a teacher? And in response to that, I actually would recommend that we have an event coming up in Birmingham where Lama Shenpen is going to devote whole weekend to exploring guru principle, which is basically about, you know, teacher-student relationship. So that is a big topic, I would say, and I found what she's got to add is insightful. So maybe on that note we can finish. Yeah. Shall we just do the dedication? We dedicate this punya to the enlightenment of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings realize complete and perfect awakening. May the heart's awareness awaken in the unawakened. Where it has begun to stir, may it never fade, and may it awaken fully. Chanchu Samye Rinpoche Ma Chepanam Chejujik Shepa Nyampa Mepatan Gone Gondu Pawashu Chanchu Samye Rinpoche Ma Chepanam Chejujik Shepa Nyampa Mepatan Gone Gondu Pawashu Chanchu Samye Rinpoche Ma Chepanam Chejujik Chepa Nyampa Mepatan Gone Gondu Pelwa